wording. The path from this point is a permitted path.
Do you want me to do this to you?
Yes, please. Well,
At
it's
that
subject to
size?
it. Yes, please. The landowner allows a member of the public to use the path until further notice, providing they do so at their own risk. Please follow the white marker posts. Please keep dogs on leads.
3.
3, please.
Right.
And then,
I'll see.
if everybody's happy, I'll speak to
try and
Mike.
get them online, which is the cheapest way of doing it.
If that's okay with everybody, and get a quote. So that covers Battleborough Lane. Anything else on footpaths?
Capital That's
Highways. Who's highways? Malcolm?
No, nothing to report.
Nothing to report. That's nice and easy, Malcolm. Well done.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was too good to be true.
I bring this up nearly every time and nothing's been done about this great big holes on the left of the road, Ham Road, beyond the cottages, beyond the houses. And it's really, really bad. Still bad. Still a big hole there. I nearly went down it in my car.
Malcolm, when you go down Ham Road
Yes.
to see...
Yes, I've seen the holes myself.
Oh, can you make a note then of the holes and then we'll get them sorted?
Thank you.
The one at Chill Park.
Yes.
They have done something there. We're not quite sure to what extent they've done it, but they have done something.
It's mainly on the left going down, isn't it? Towards Barrow. Yeah.
But, yes.
Just on that, they have installed some planings in some of them.
Yes.
The worst holes have been done, but there are still some others, I guess.
Okay.
We'll raise it again with them, and you know, because I spoke to them and they said some work had been done, but they didn't say it had been signed off. Because they normally sign it off because they give you a reference number and then they say, well, when it's done, that's effectively written off that number, reference number. They haven't done that yet. So, yeah.
So, a quick couple of things. One, I couldn't remember whether I mentioned before, Middle Street near the bridge. Had I reported that they'd done the work there? No. We had a complaint a little while ago because on the approach to the railway bridge on Middle Street, just before you get to the farm that's been refurbished, they put up some safety barriers to stop people going down onto the lines. But a number of horse riders were very concerned because the safety barriers were basically metal stakes with a big point on the top. So we raised that, and it was just at the height that if you came off your horse, you would have got skewered. So we went back to Highways, who went back to the rail track. They've been out, they've now done work to put something across the top of those so that there is no longer a safety issue. And I've reported it back to the horse riders who reported it, and they were happy with what had been done. The other thing was just that we spoke earlier about the speed watch group, the extension of the 30-mile-an-hour limit, and also Burton Row and these signs. It may be worth just contacting Catherine Tyson, who is the signs and lines lady. I know she's recently been out for a site visit with East Brent Parish Council to look at some of the issues they had, and it might be worth inviting her out to actually meet us on site so she can see what the issues are in terms of round balls and repeaters.
What about cattle crossing?
Two farms. People come up with flat barriers.
It's something we can talk to her about.
Yeah.
Because I know we did put.
Can we put that on?
I've known about
asking
that.
about cattle
Yeah, so
crossing signs.
if she can do a site visit,
Yeah.
that's probably the best thing, and then she can see it first hand, can't she? Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, just to recap, Malcolm, when you go down to see the lady about the speeding and the signs, you'll have a look at the holes in the ball pack.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, Village Green car park and toilet block. Is that you, David?
Well, we were downstairs actually, but for this moment I will play the part of Andrea Tuckett. I'll just read her notes. The green, grass in good condition, brambles regrowing on the left-hand side. Well, I noticed that Jason was out there doing the brambles this afternoon. Chain fence in need of repair, picnic benches need staining. Well, that was something that we covered when we had a site visit. I seem to recall we talked about replacing them. All play equipment in good order, rubbish bins acceptable, surfaces on play equipment in good order, top left-hand corner bench needs repairing, car park all clear and tidy, Toilets, soap, toilet roll, sanitary bins, general bin in good use. Ladies' floor has debris on, needs to be cleaned off. Ladies' left-hand toilet, slow flushing and has scale.
Take those up
Year end of her report.
Sedgman. They do clean.
Flushing issue will have to be done by a plumber, I guess. So we need to ask George to go and have a look at that first.
Okay.
That's the end of her report, but I do need your permission. That is something I've made for the ladies' toilet because it lacks a mirror, we agreed. But I need your permission because I need to screw holes in the ladies' toilet wall to fix it.
Yeah, so that's going above the
Sink.
sink. Where's the sink now? I've forgotten. In the corner, is it? I've forgotten.
God.
On the front wall. So there's space for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine, David. Thank you. Good. Do we owe anything for that piece of kit?
The bill for all of the bins and the toilet brushes and the mirror comes to a mighty £37.92.
Well done.
I'll
Thank
take that
you.
and I'll make sure that is done.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Thanks very much for doing that.
And can I ask to whom I pass the...
Yeah, well, according to my list here, I've got well, September is Andrea, so you've obviously swapped around, haven't you, a bit, because there's been a bit of swapping around. So Nigel Summers was listed, so I mean,
All right, I'll give it to Nigel. when he
Give it to
gets
Nigel?
back.
Yeah, okay, fine. And then Bob, obviously, from October.
That's right.
Bob in October.
Yeah.
But, yeah. One of the things, actually, while we're on this, I'm not quite sure how you want to work it. Historically, I suppose what we did is the surgery cover was done on the month that you were on the rota. So, if, for example, you were down for September green, and you effectively did the September surgery, is that still the right way to do it, or would you rather the surgery duty was on the end of the previous month? So, for example, the September one would be doing the October surgery. Any particular feelings about that?
As it is. Ain't broke, don't fix it.
Chairman, we just clarify then, so for the next one, which is our October meeting,
That'll be the October person,
That'll
which will be
be me.
yourself. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
right.
Yeah, September will be.
Be Nigel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Well, this is the
this
September.
one's September one
Yeah.
today, so this should have been
It
Nigel.
should have been Nigel's actually, but David kindly covered it. So if Nigel,
So it's Bob next, is it?
it's Bob next.
October.
It's Bob next in October.
Yeah.
But September is still going to be covered.
Well, the date on Andrea's thing is September.
Sure, it can't be because she's.
Because I did it twice in
Well,
August.
yeah. My guess is that it really ought to be Nigel actually.
Okay, I'll give it
It
to
should be
Nigel.
Nigel for September, and then we'll take over from October. Yeah.
If you could do it towards the end of September, and then I think that would be better
Sure.
and ready
Yeah,
for the
I'll give
October.
it to Nigel.
Thanks, David. Thank you. GB Sports monthly report.
You've all received a copy, hopefully, of the GB Sports report. There's nothing new on it. What you will have received is the annual report,
Yeah.
which has got sort of glossy pictures and graphics and things.
So that one.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the annual one, which of course, in a sense, supersedes the monthly one because that's the one that was done I think that was done
June.
June. So they've only just actually sent a report on that. So, but the monthly one doesn't show any new areas other than those that we're already aware of, and which Brian noted the comments from the visit.
Yeah, on 8E, is that when I give my report of our meeting?
Yeah.
Which covers a lot of the things.
It does. It does. And there's also a quote as well, which we've got from GB Sports for one of the items on there. But as far as the actual monthly report is concerned, it's identical to the previous month.
Okay. Surgery issues.
We have them queuing up at the doors, as you would know. Just Kim, that was all.
Okay. Any news from Kim or updates?
Not really, no.
Okay.
It was as much,
Thank you.
David, or as much came out, was there really, from anything new came out from the surgery?
No.
Okay.
Happy to see Rains.
The next item, emergency. I've spoken to Peter about this, and he's given me the names of the existing emergency planning group that we had. Peter is happy to be a member of the group, but he doesn't want to, if you like, be the leader, for want of a better word, of the group. So I think what we need to consider, and what I'll do, I'll contact the old members of the group and see if they're still willing to be members, and once I get a response then I'll report back at the next meeting so we can... Are you happy to help with that, David?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is not necessarily formed from Parish Council, is it?
No.
It should be opened up, really.
Yeah, well, they are non-councillor members. Yeah. Okay, so I'll report back once I've contacted them at the next meeting. Speedwatch, SID updates?
Well, the SID update, in fact, there is an item on the agenda, we might as well cover it here. The actual SID has been now paid for, because they insisted upon it as a pro forma. So I sent them a cheque, and it will be dispatched this week. Apparently the subject to some new testing that they wanted to do before they sent it out, which is good, because it means they're checking it all. And Richard should have it by the end of this week. So it'll be going directly to Richard Ibrahim, and obviously we need to perhaps ask Richard to come maybe to the next meeting to ask how it's all worked out, how it's set up. And if there are any queries on the setup, obviously we can go back to the manufacturers. Although it does seem that they're doing quite a bit of checking, so that's good news.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing on Speedwatch apart from what the ladies discussed with us earlier on.
Clerk matters?
There's nothing that's not been covered anywhere else. The only thing I would say in this area is the laptop, this piece of kit here, which the council now own. 2 days of my holiday, my own computer went on the blink and the hard drive fell apart on it. I was able to rescue all the data, and in fact ordered a new laptop that meets the sort of average specification for a modern day laptop. And it's now up and running. All the data's transferred. Everything that anybody coming into the council for the first time would want to get their hands on is now on that laptop. All the files, all the payroll issues, all the software that we use, everything is now on the council's own laptop. And so that should safeguard us then for the future, should anything happen, rather than having it on my laptop, relying on the USB stick to take it off should that need arise. So the council now have their own laptop, and that is now set up and ready to run. So that's the only thing I'd like to say on that, really.
Thank you. Correspondence?
Well, just the George obviously shared with council on the update from the question.
Thank you. Finance?
Statutory payments for the September period are as per agreed in April, which is Jason Mayo, Jubilee Sports, clerk salary and tax, 1,562. We have the new council laptop and associated periphery, and by that I mean that you probably are aware that some of the office software is extremely expensive, but I was able to secure a copy of Office 2010, which is still relevant and still being currently supported by Microsoft, for a cost of £40 instead of £250 for a new copy of software. So the council, the laptop I managed to buy from a company called Laptops Direct, we got £150 saving on that. It's got the latest Windows 10 software on there. It's now got Office 10 on there. It's a solid state drive laptop. This is the way that David, you'll be more familiar with that, moving away from the old hard drive. So it's a fairly well future-proofed laptop, hopefully, for a good few years. And all of that was £519.97 with £71.65 VAT reclaimable. So the net cost to the council is just over £460.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's have with that. Mike Watts on the Knoll footpath, £1,284, was £214 VAT.
That's
Sorry, £1,284 includes £214 VAT.
That doesn't include the...
Doesn't include the Virginia
gates.
Roberts.
Yes, yes, okay, thank you.
That's only the work that he's currently done.
Yeah,
GB Sports annual inspection, that was £90. That was the report that I sent you
Yeah.
copies of.
Yeah.
So that's all on the payments side this month. So just need a proposal and seconder if you're happy with the questions.
Bob, sorry, are you proposing or seconding?
No, I was going to ask a
Oh,
question.
yeah, sure.
Please do.
Right, sure.
We're halfway through the financial year, roughly, aren't we?
Yeah.
How do you feel it's going?
The budget I sent you out
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago is about where it should be. We're about halfway through the year and about halfway through the budget actually.
No.
Bob raised quite an important point, and that was that I think, Bob, you were perhaps suggesting that a slightly more detailed breakdown of the budget would be quite useful in terms, particularly on the larger items. The software I use is only Excel. It has got some limitations, Excel, unfortunately, in terms of how you can break things down. What I would be suggesting before we venture into next year's finance is to use a piece of council approved software which will allow us much more flexibility. There's something called Edge, which in fact is written specifically for parish councils. And what it would allow us to do is print off a budget which is broken down into component parts rather than just the sort of main headings that we have at the moment. So I think that's something which we need to talk about as we move through the year, but I will try and provide a bit more detail on what we've currently got on the budget. And we'll be having an audit group in October, which is the first of this particular council. So John and Andrea and Colin, that's in the afternoon of the next meeting. Good. If you're happy to, and we can go through some issues then.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on payments?
I propose we pay what is in front of us.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Bob? All those in favour? Thank
The
you.
only other thing is there is the E.ON contract is up for renewal for the toilet block. As always, we've got to look around to see if there are any better deals to be done than E.ON. There aren't so many players in the commercial business side of things as there are in domestic. So whereas domestic you've got all this wealth of different suppliers, you don't have that facility with business contracts. However, E.ON are largely holding their price for this year. There's very little difference. So I would recommend, really, there's no particular gain in changing the contract with all the hassle associated with that, for very little gain in extra finance.
Okay.
So, but I will put that as a formal proposal once I've got the details. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Right. Matters of consideration. 8A, 2 Brent Street. I've got to make some observations here. And David, you must think I'm a scourge to you, but I had a very pleasant evening out with some friends on the 24th of August and got back in about 11:30 to see an email from you sent at 17 minutes past 11 demanding a response from Bob on your previous email dated the 22nd of August at 21:56. I found that email intimidatory, bullying, and totally unreasonable for you as a councillor. And I realise you haven't got Andrea, Warwick and Nigel here to hear this, but to be honest with you, you want us to debate things between the meetings sensibly by email. And I must admit you have given me the perfect excuse to say this is why we shouldn't do it. Because in your email, you have included someone called Alistair Borman of Momentum Crowdfunding, which I've had a look at. And he's nothing to do with the parish council.
Correct.
Why should we possibly enter into any discussions with you about parish council work when you involve people that aren't even associated with the parish council? Why should we bother? You just seem to pander to anyone that seems to have a view for your, well, comments, your assumptions, which are totally wrong half the time. You go on Nextdoor and giving assumptions and spreading concerns about the work of the parish council, completely untrue. And that's why I've withdrawn myself from Nextdoor, and I don't want anything to do with your comments. So in future, please, fellow councillors, will you not respond to email communication during the month? It is going to people we don't want it to go to, or are not associated with this parish council. And I think it's totally unfair that you should do that to us. Totally unfair. And I think it's totally unfair that you should bombard Bob with an email at 11:20 on a Saturday evening. What's the matter? Wasn't Match of the Day good enough for you? Or the late night movie?
Have you quite finished?
I have quite finished.
I'm glad to hear it.
Well, then you understand why. Do you not appreciate what I am saying?
I don't quite appreciate the way that you're saying it, but on the
Right,
other hand,
well then you appreciate
let me
it then.
finish. You having ranted on, allow me to finish. I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate some of what you're saying, and I appreciate some of why you're saying it.
Then don't do it, David. Then don't do it.
No, no,
We've
no,
asked you politely.
I know you did. I know you did. The fact that you do not choose to think that councillors should have contact by email between meetings is your choice.
No, it's not. It's my recommendation because of this very circumstance that has arisen. This is an intimidating, bullying email, which is totally unfair. And you've acknowledged what I've said. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of it. And I will not be responding or taking part in any of your email communication whatsoever. And now, I don't know if, Andrew, I think you wanted to help us out here.
I wanted to have a quick word with David, if possible, because I'm hoping that I can extract a fulsome apology from him for the way he treated me and my wife. I'm misquoting an election leaflet and misspelling my late daughter's name. He chose to use totally inaccurate information and consequently has caused my wife a great deal of distress.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my head around.
You misquoted an election leaflet that was distributed to your front door.
Right.
You misquoted and misspelled my late daughter's name.
Well, I apologise.
Can I have that record recorded, please?
Yes, of course. If I did that, then I apologise.
Well, if you're a journalist, David, you should have checked your facts, to be honest with you. You're supposed to be a journalist.
Yes, indeed, Colin.
I have the leaflet with me tonight. You failed to spell it correctly.
Right, I do understand,
And
and I
then you accused me of
apologise.
selling land to the council for affordable housing, which was totally inaccurate.
I see.
You know, this is the problem, David. You latch onto things and you make assumptions. But I think we've made the point. I think Councillor Gillingham has made his personal point. I have made a point. I don't know if anybody wishes to add to that point. Brian?
Well, I think to take the sting out of this, we need just to discuss things face to face and not put stuff on the internet. If you can't say something to somebody's face, and don't say it at all. That's my feeling.
Thank you. Right, let's move on. I think we've made the points. But Bob, would you like to have the opportunity to respond to that?
Certainly, in terms of an update to members on the 2 Brent Street, because I think there's been information put out on forums and stuff that is inaccurate from a number of sources. There was a newspaper item that came up a little while ago which was to do with Sedgemoor taking an involvement in the 7 properties at 2 Brent Street. I think it's worth just explaining the background to members so they know what the situation is. As you'll remember, when we first started talking about the affordable housing and the affordable housing survey was done, there was a requirement that was shown of 14 units across the village. Of those, 11 were shown as needed for people who needed them for rent, and the other 3 were for shared ownership, for the other type of tenure. There were comments made when the headline was in the local paper about Sedgemoor getting involved that this was somehow depriving the local residents of their ability to have the affordable housing that they were promised. It is no different to what was planned in the sense that it could have been a local housing association that took on those units. It happens to be Sedgemoor has taken the view that they would do that. They will still be subject to the same local lettings criteria that they would have been to any housing association, so it will still be local people and it will still be having to meet those criteria. There was also an allegation made that this was all a cunning plan that Sedgemoor had from the start. That is not true. In fact, Sedgemoor wasn't in a legal position to have taken these on until the end of last year, when the government changed the regulations. Local authorities weren't permitted to borrow money to fund housing. That regulation was changed, I think it was October, November of last year, and Sedgemoor is actually currently reviewing the way that it provides affordable housing across the whole of the district. This happens to have been the first site that has come forward since that has been able to be looked at. So the setup is exactly the same. Had a affordable housing provider taken them on again, they would have paid the developer a discounted price for those units, which is exactly what Sedgemoor has done. As you'll have seen in the headlines that were reported, it's approximately £1 million. It works out at about £150,000 per unit.
A bit less.
Yeah, in terms of legal fees as well, it rounds up to that. But in terms of obviously the value of those properties, that's approximately it's approximately 60% of the value of the properties. So in effect, Sedgemoor Housing Association ends up with a property that is worth significantly more than what they paid for it, and that is the discount that the developer has to provide. So the fact that it's Sedgemoor that is involved hasn't changed the situation, despite what has been put out there. And I think it is disappointing that obviously information is put on that isn't accurate on a forum, because it sets a lot of people's mind worrying, and people thought that the local people who these houses were for were going to be deprived of having access to an affordable rent house, which is not the case. So hopefully that's, again, I think it's useful to do a briefing of this nature at a meeting like this, because then we're all aware of it, and if there are any questions, we can deal with them at the meeting, rather than have things go around on sort of Chinese whispers, which sometimes end up giving people the wrong impression of what's happening.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob.
I know it's a bit early yet, but do we know roughly when the whole 2 Brent Street will be finished?
Not certain, but certainly I think they're aiming for, I think my understanding is summer, autumn of next year for them to be complete. But that's the sort of ballpark, but nothing is set in stone.
Is that an average time, do you think?
Yeah. The other thing, just to head up, and it's not strictly 2 Brent Street because it's the other end of the road, but I am led to believe that there is the official turf cutting of that site at the sort of the cider farm end of Brent Street They're looking at doing that at the end of October.
The station roadside.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Bob? David, are you happy now with that explanation from Bob?
I think most particularly the assurance that he's given us that the caveats for eligibility for the council-owned homes will be precisely the same. Is that the case, Bob?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, that has been one of the concerns, because one of the things that's been going around is the belief that there are kind of more generalised council house rules that could lead to people who qualify under a different set of criteria could come in from outside of the area and have a higher priority rating. But from what you've said, that won't apply.
No, because, and certainly under the planning regulations that have been put on, it is subject to a local lettings policy, and whoever is the owner of those properties is subject to that condition. So they still have to meet those local lettings.
Much better to have a discussion and an explanation. Thanks, Bob. I think that exhausts that item on our agenda. 8B, communications policy. You've all had a copy of. You've all had a copy of David's communication proposal. I hope that you've all read it. Does anyone want to make any comments about it? Malcolm?
Yes, reference the communication proposal by David Sturgis. I would like to draw your attention to several comments that have been directed at me, and I consider them a personal affront. They are as follows. Quote 1. Called an online Luddite. 2. As yet there remains a problem. Some of our members are not connected to online activity and have no ability to engage with social media or receive emails. This is a severe restraint on their ability to serve as councillors. 3. It is not our parishioners' responsibility to accept that they have councillors who are unable or unwilling to engage with an online communication. I consider these comments unwarranted and demand an apology.
Oh, it seems to be my evening for apologising, Malcolm. I do apologise to you if you've taken any offence from anything that I've written in that report.
Accepted.
Thank you, David.
Anybody else want me to apologise for anything? David?
Where do you want us to start? I think there are some useful points in this. I don't think we should use a scattergun approach using Facebook, Nextdoor, or what was the other one, or Twitter. I think we all know the problems associated with Twitter and the opportunity for people to spread malicious gossip and comment. But on the whole, I think it has been constructive, but it clearly isn't a policy, but a series of statements, some of them personal, obviously, which is what David's job is. My own feeling about this, and I don't know if people are thinking on these lines, but I'll come back. I don't think we should have a scattergun approach. I think we should concentrate on one form of communication. And the interesting thing is, I'd like to know from our villagers or our residents what form of communication would suit them in particular, because it could well be that a lot of them aren't on Facebook. I certainly am not, and don't intend to be on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, and I don't intend to be on Twitter, and I'll explain the reasons why I don't intend to. I withdraw myself from next door, but I am happy to share in sensible means of communication, which are very much, I phoned my pal at a local parish council, and his lines of communication were very much along the lines of ours. In fact, probably we may be a little bit more open with our video recording than they are, I'm not sure. But that's my opinion, and sorry, it's my feeling having read this. I don't know what you feel about those comments, David, but please come back to me.
By all means. I think the most important thing to say is please don't look upon this as saying we should do all of these things. I mean, quite apart from anything else, that would require a lot of time, effort and energy. So it's to some degree a kind of a list of options. It's certainly my belief that we could and should do more to in particular tell our parishioners what we're doing, and including things that don't, for obvious reasons, get included in the agenda, in the minutes that are displayed or that are put into the Brent Knoll News. I mean, for example, we've now learned that we're going to take delivery of the new speed indicator device this week, next week. Well, then, as I think Alice would confirm, if we arrange a photograph of some councillors with that new machine once it's arrived and send that with a press release to her and to people like the Western Mercury and to burnonsea.com, then that is, telling our parishioners more of what we do than they would otherwise see. So, a number of items in here are referring to online activity. Okay, if that's an area of discomfort, I can understand. But there are some other areas in here that are straightforward, practical actions that I would recommend that we look at.
Okay, so, sorry, are there any other comments?
Would this be...
Hang on, John. Bob was going to speak.
Yeah, I was only going to say, again, in terms of things like press releases, I think that does make some sense. I don't see any problem with that whatsoever. The only thing I would say from a consistency point of view and making sure that it is the council's view that it ought to, I mean, all our correspondence generally will go through the clerk, because the clerk is the proper officer. The rest of us are councillors, and as such, I think if we are, I think it would be right for us to draw up a press release, agree it, but I think it ought to be issued by the clerk, so that there is that common point of address. But I think it would certainly, I see no problem in highlighting the sort of things the parish is doing. I didn't disagree, but was slightly concerned about, there was a couple of times you made comments in the report which made reference to the fact that what the clerk puts out is factual, and I think the comment was it's not a journalistic report. And I can understand that, but the job of the council is to make sure that we put out stuff that it's got to be accurate.
Oh, of course.
And so as long as what goes out is that, I don't see that as a problem. I think that would be something we could do more of. Like you, I'm a little nervous of social media, only in the sense that, as we've seen in the past, things can be misinterpreted and then it can cause an issue. But as I say, I think if we start with going down the route of putting out more information on a more regular basis and writing it in a way that maybe is a bit more engaging than a dry minute, I don't see any problem with doing that. I think that would be a plus.
May I ask, Bob, putting your Brent Knoll news editor hat on for a moment, because I don't know if you would be comfortable financially with it, the suggestion of putting a quarterly newsletter together that summarises what the council's been doing over the past quarter. So a number of the things that I mean, if you look at some of the things that we're looking at now that would hopefully come to fruition over the coming quarter, like, you know, the playground equipment, one would like to think the Loreen alongside us here, but maybe that's a little optimistic.
I mean, certainly in terms of the Brent Knoll News, if it's flyer, that can be a bit more problematic in the sense of it's I don't do the distribution, someone else does that.
It's
So they've got to insert it, they've got to take it around,
Yeah.
the deliverers have got to deliver it without it dropping out. But having an insert in terms of like when we have the annual report that the chairman does, that's normally a two-sided thing which we put in as a couple of pages. So it's not actually an insert, but it's in the magazine itself. But certainly we can make an amount of space available. At the moment we limit it, it's pretty much a page for the parish council. On a quarterly basis, I'm sure we could double that if there was a sort of fairly easily to do that. So I mean, we could find a way of including that in the Brent Knoll News. I can't see a problem with that.
I thought a quarterly update to the legal
Yes. Yeah, because I remember Brian did do you remember Brian? He did a whole list of all the tasks and projects we'd undertaken in the year. And there was quite a number when you did that, of all the different projects. And I think that something like that would be really useful.
There was one other thing I just wanted to pick up, which was there was a reference made to the videos. And just to confirm, what goes up on the website includes everything from the start of the meeting, including, so for tonight, the comments that were made before the meeting officially starts are all on there.
Right.
So that's always part of that. And I know there was a comment made in there about whether it was feasible to edit it so it's a bit more bite-sized. In terms of what goes up on the website, legally we have to put up everything, so you can't. Otherwise, there's the danger that people could think that we've chopped out the bits that we didn't like and stitched it together. So literally, it is a warts and all. It starts from when the chairman says we're starting the meeting, public speakers, and finishes when we say close the meeting, and everything in there in between is kept, unless it's a confidential item where we have to turn the thing off. But I don't do any editing of it whatsoever. It is put up there, warts and all.
David, where do you think then we now go? Do we look at our existing policy and mould in some of your recommendations, or do you want to come
I'd like
back
to take it away, Colin,
Okay.
in the light of
Comments.
Suggestions, and because we've already said that we would have it as a sort of two-parter, as it were, and come back with the suggested alterations ahead of October.
Yeah, I think a lot of this probably because it sets the scene that's not necessary.
No.
And just if you like, expand what we've got and incorporate our new ideas, and see what comes out at the end, as it were. Is that okay? You're happy to do that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Is that it all on communications? Everybody happy now? Yeah. Brian?
I do, in my experience as a head teacher, people always moan about lack of communication, how much you do, so be aware of that. We are filmed, people can watch this, they get reports already regularly, the BKN and so on. You put notices up on the notice board, but there are people who will still, however good we make it, there will still be people who will say lack of communication. It's just my experience.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to know
I'm just being a cynic.
I sent out the agendas and the minutes now
And we
to
do
something like about 39 people. And when I sent the agendas out this time, I hadn't had a single reply back from anybody to say they've either received it or thank. I have no idea whether they received it or not. I've got no indication. I don't need that communication, but I just wonder how many people actually did open it and actually bothered to look at it.
Is it worth having some form of survey from our villagers, or residents rather, to see what they would prefer? how they would prefer to hear? Or?
Again, being cynic, if you do a survey, you get
Yeah.
back 10%.
No,
I
if
know,
that.
I know.
But at least I think David would have, in doing that, David would also appreciate the problems that,
Yeah.
that we do have
I'm
and
not
that
trying
we
to
do try to
I'm not
address.
trying to negate what David's
Yeah,
done.
no.
I recall you telling me the figures for the survey that Caroline tried to carry out
Yes.
at the shop,
Yeah,
which was a bit demoralising, to say the least.
yeah.
I mean, yes, ideally,
Yeah.
a survey would be great. But in a sense, you kind of want to do that after you've made some changes,
Yeah.
so as to be able to measure those changes.
Okay, yeah.
Because one of the, I mean, I made the point in the document that I don't have access to the Google Analytics for the website. So I have no idea how many people are, certainly from within the village, are visiting the website. I don't know, do we have a Google Analytics?
Probably if I asked David McMillan, he could probably provide me with that. I'm sure if I asked him the question.
Yeah.
We used
And
to
we
have
know
a
that.
counter.
Yeah, we did. When that young lad,
Yeah,
what's his name, did
Matthew
it.
Ward.
That's it. We had it then, so I'm sure we've got the
I mean,
data
you
somewhere.
can see on YouTube, you can see the number of viewers to the video.
I'll ask David.
So at the moment I'm working on an assumption that it would not be dissimilar probably for the website.
Okay, let's do. Sorry, let's do as you say then. Mould together the policy. Let's agree the policy and the new things we're going to do. Then we'll see how effective. Try to see how
Yeah.
effective it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks David for doing that. Right? These jobs do take some time, I know, and it's nice of you to put the effort into it. Thank you. 8C, quotes for village green tree work.
Yeah, we had two quotes. David met up with Mark Fiddis and got a quote for £395. This is for the work that when we collectively looked at the green, decided there was some tree work to be done. And we've also had a quote from David Bateman of 315, but they're not like for like, are they, Bob? There's a difference with what they've quoted. There's a couple of areas that Mark Fiddis has quoted for that David hasn't. So we need to decide whether we either get David back to assess those other areas, or we make sure the quotes are the same, the work is the same before we make our assessment on who should do the work.
Mr. Chairman, will you remind us what the work was?
Well, in fact,
specifically, I forgot.
it was the...
You know, if you're walking around the green, Brian, you know, go through the gates and go up the left-hand path. So straight away there's that acacia tree there
Yeah,
with branches down at head height.
yeah,
And then you carry on up that path, turn left into the sort of L-shaped area.
brambles.
Yeah, and you've got some, not so much, the brambles, but more particularly they're also, I can't remember, I think they're sycamores that again are hanging down at face height.
Right,
And then over by the jungle gym playground equipment,
yeah,
there's I forgot what it is, I can't remember what sort of tree it is, but it's overhanging the equipment itself, and we deemed it to be a bit of a danger if kids hung on to the branches and then fell from that.
right, okay, thank you.
Oh, and there's also the apple tree from,
Yeah.
you know, just outside the toilet block.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
We're not chucking that down, are we?
No, just the branch that's at head height.
Bob,
Yeah, the difference was, I must admit, when we were around and looked at it, I got the four big items, which was the apple tree, the bit above the jungle gym, the bit near the slide, the hedge, and also the acacia at the entrance. What I didn't get a quote for, because I wasn't sure which they were, was the overhanging branches. I wasn't sure. So the difference is 80 quid for whatever those overhanging branches are.
Yeah.
Which
Probably the same actually in the end. I suspect they're probably very, very close. So it's a question really of what we want to do about it. And we want to give the job to.
so who will have to do more work? David
David
Bateman?
Bateman had to do a little bit more work in terms of the left-hand side, the branches. On the left-hand side on the...
We're not looking at like for like, are we? But
No.
I'll be guided by you all. We need to get it done.
Can I suggest, Chairman, if it would be worth maybe getting David Bateman back
Yeah.
to look at whatever the branches are, and then if we can agree that we go with whichever is the lower quote rather than wait for
Yes,
another month
yes,
to come
yes.
back. We know it's the maximum of whatever Mark Billis is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if Bateman comes in under that, then we go with Bateman.
So who will see
Well, I'm happy to
David?
speak. I'll happy to speak to David and
Okay.
ask him if he could do that. And I mean, because you met him in the first instance, you want to get
Well, to be honest, I'm still not 100% clear as to which the overhanging branches are, so it might be better if David's happy to
Right,
meet
okay.
him.
So can you see him in the
David,
Yeah.
are you happy to meet him?
Yeah.
Thank you.
David to me.
Okay,
So
so-
I'll have a word with David Bateman then.
Okay, so the proposal is then that David meets with David Bateman and looks at the additional work, and he gives David the quote, and David will then come back to Owen, and then Owen will issue an order to whoever has come up with the cheapest price.
Okay.
That's the proposal.
That's all right.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Code of conduct training, well,
Yeah.
that's just
Now
confirmed.
confirm the 6:30 on the 30th of September.
Okay.
Melanie is coming out to do that training, so
Here.
I think it's obviously important that we get here. But obviously we get as good a turnout as we possibly can on that, because she's giving up her time to come from Sedgman. So,
Yeah.
and it's particularly, I think, relevant, if I may say so, to new members, because some of the code of conduct issues may not be fully aware by new members of council. So, but I will send out a note just confirming all of that with
Thank you.
Which date did you say?
the 30th of September.
That, yes.
It's actually a Monday evening.
6:30.
I'll send come along as well, because you know, it's important to know that it's signing.
Okay.
We're all talking the same language.
Thank you, Owen. 80, play equipment report after GB sports visits for
Yes,
August.
That's me.
That's you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did send a report to those that were involved in it, and I've got hard copies for everybody else of what we thought. David, and Bob, you had one, didn't you? And you had one on email.
I'd just like to remind myself,
And,
if I may, please.
You know. And
That's
there's
good, thank you.
one for Cynthia.
Thank you so much.
Can I have one, please? Can you spare one, Brian, please?
Yeah.
I've got one on email, so it's okay.
Got one for yourself?
No. I've got it on my computer, so that's all right.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
What I suggest is that you read it at your leisure and then decide perhaps at the next meeting or the meeting after what the priorities are and how we can afford it.
We do have one, just a matter of interest, Brian, we do actually have one quote on one item that we raised at that meeting, which was the fireman's pole by the climbing frame. GB Sports decided, probably reasonably, that was quite a serious breakdown in the equipment there, and have given us a quote to repair the fireman's pole of £463. That's including a £77 VAT. You know, whether there are other people, the trouble with play equipment, of course, not everybody deals with play equipment. This is a problem.
How much was it?
Well, if you think about the net figure for the council, it's £385, or £77 VAT. That's to, and I read what it says, to visit site, cut out a circle of wet pour, approximately 450 to 500 millimetres, around the base of the fireman's pole, cut out suspected corroded base of the pole and weld a new section to secure. Repair wet pour surface with a coloured EDPM wear. So it's basically putting it back to where it is now. But again, I guess if you're looking at all of these items, that might come into the mix with other things.
Yeah. As regards discussing at the next meeting, I'm afraid I won't be here. I'm away on holiday. So you can carry on without me, or you can leave it until the following time. It's up to you.
Can I just ask, Jim, in terms of the fireman's pole, obviously, for those who weren't on the site visit, he basically gave the fireman's pole a pull, and it's broken off at the bottom, so it is now loose and moving around. So that's why he was saying it needed doing. And in terms of, if we weren't to do it, I think you'd have to remove it, and then you've got a completely open end which kids are going to topple off. So I'm not sure we've got a lot of choice in terms of getting that done. And you said we've just had a inspection done. Did they comment on the farmer's pole? Okay, so that is now a risk item.
Yes,
Well, next to the wet poor area.
yeah, that's the problem. So it's disturbing the wet pool, which is a
Yeah.
slight problematic, but it's not, obviously he's quoted for that. And
Which was it?
the wet pool is obviously going to be disturbed because the hole goes into the base where the wet pool is.
Well,
But,
it has to be repaired, we have to go and get the people back.
So is it your wish that this work is done, really, to ensure safety?
Yes.
All those in favour?
Some
Okay,
purchase
let's
order
carry
for
that, so yeah, they can do that. Okay. And shall we, how do you want us to go about this, Brian? You've made a really good detailed list.
Well, if you can really look at it during the next couple of months and
Okay.
make comments, highlight it, and then we can take it from there. If you want me to be back at the meeting, it'll be in November.
Okay.
So I won't be at the meeting in October.
Right, so, I mean,
Very inconvenient.
Nigel could look at it if he did his
Yeah,
inspection, or alternatively Bob could do it.
yeah. I'll drop a sheet to him as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Yes, John.
Clearly, one of the more expensive items on the green, if we attend to it, will be the fences on either side of the green. We don't really know what it's going to cost. However, we will have to get some money put aside in the future. And I wonder if it would be an idea if we go off and get some quotes in now, or perform quotes, so that we can have some idea of where we stand.
just one thing, Mike Watts, who's done our recent work for us, I looked back over the history. He gave us a quote actually for this, the fence on the right-hand side to replace that about 2 years ago, and it was £2,760.
But the right-hand side, not only will the fence have to be replaced, but needs to all the brush. There's quite a lot to
These are
do.
the quoting.
But I mean, Mike, whatever his name is,
Mike Watts.
well, do we need to get a couple of quotes in?
So that's sum of money, yes.
Well, shall I move it forward slowly?
Hang on.
I think it makes sense to get another, so at least we know what we're talking about. But what I was going to ask, in terms of the quote we had, is that chain link, or was that the fence that the gentleman was talking about when we met him, which was the
It was that green.
It's the
more
green.
solid
It's
fence?
more solid.
Okay.
It's the stuff which goes around the back of the mother, isn't it?
Right.
And I think that did you speak to the landowners about that?
Yeah, they were, well, the ones with the middle house who came here.
I'm sure that
and they
green
were
fence.
perfectly happy with that.
I'm sure that, and it needs to be a couple of metres high too.
I mean, anything is going to be more,
Well, we get
Yes,
some
yes.
quotes in, so we know. They just get
Yes, GB Sports suggested a minimum height of 1.2 metres for the fence. Do you know if Watt's quote included that?
I've no idea actually, it was so long ago.
No, I
know I've still got the
realised,
quote actually.
But I think we need to specify.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much point in having a fence which is low enough where somebody thinks they can crawl over the top. I reckon it needs to be a couple of metres or so high. And anyway, if we get a quote for it, I don't mean to say we've got to take it. We can always modify it, but we need to know a ballpark figure to turn our face up. And I would have thought perhaps on the left-hand side of the green, if we do anything there, replace the chain link.
John, I'm happy to liaise with you and Mike Watts if you want to get another
Okay,
contract.
you and I will talk about it.
I'll give you the details.
I'll speak to you,
Thank you.
but I'll tell you, Don.
Tendering process update for the village
Yeah.
contract.
This is moving forward quite well actually at the moment. We've got, at the moment, we have 6 interested parties to quote for the tendering contract for the village, including our existing one, which is Jason Mayo, and also including a company called West Hill Garden Services, who are coming from Westbury Sub-Mendip. But I have sort of pointed out that